Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of the Four Quarters podcast powered by Four Quarters Media. I'm your host, Tyler Bennett, here with you once again. This is part one of episode 6, our regularly scheduled Thursday youth sports episode. Part number 1, the reason why you've clicked on this one to hear what we've got going on now. You're going to hear from Cape Breton Capers men's basketball head coach Matt Skinn. And then in part 2, which you can listen to right after this one, and hopefully you will, you'll hear from UNBC Timberwolves forward Emma Van Brunessen. Both great chats this week. Both were fantastic to get insight on an East Coast men's program and a West Coast women's program. But in part number 1 with Coach Skinn, we start off by talking about what's going on in the world. COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, the movement, and how important it is to continue what we're doing. Can't just post a few things on social media, say a few words, and then go about life like nothing's happening. You have to continue and build off what has happened so we can have equality. And I was raised on the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. Seems like such a simple concept, yet not everybody grasps it, for lack of a better term. So we kick off the show with that, having those tough conversations that you have to have these days and should be having. It should have had a long time ago to really make a change, to impact change, to better the present and the future. And then we get into his work with the podcast 2 Shots in the Ball, which you should check out on YouTube. I'll link that in the description of this podcast so you can check what they're doing. Neil Gordon, Matt Skinn, Adam Detienne, highlighting East Coast basketball, doing great work out there with that. And we look at the Capers program, kind of what the year was like for them. Ended in heartbreaking fashion against UNB in the AUS quarterfinals with a circus shot by Marcus Masters. Got his Coach Skinn's thoughts on that, how the season played out overall, and what's ahead for the program. We looked at, obviously, COVID-19. The pandemic is still delayed the start of the season till at least January. Kind of what that's done to the planning process and the preparation for the Capers to get ready for the new season. It was just a great chat with Coach Skinn, top to bottom. And we capped it off with a look at his time with the Dinos when he was out in Calgary for 2 years before coming back to the Cape Breton program last season, 2018-2019. So with that in mind, let's jump right in to part 1 of episode 6 of the Four Quarters podcast powered by Four Quarters Media with Cape Breton Capers men's basketball head coach Matt Skinn. Enjoy. All right, so I'm now thrilled to be joined by Cape Breton Capers men's basketball head coach Matt Skinn. Matt, first off, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. How are things going on your end?
Things are going really well. I appreciate you having me, and love taking the time to talk basketball anytime that I can. That's for sure.
It's a lot harder now when you can't really go out of the house and talk to other people too much. So you're limited, yeah. And my wife doesn't talk about it, so I resort to other people who are gracious enough to come on. So I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Before we jump in, kind of what is COVID? What have you been up to since this kind of all hit 3 months ago now? I know on the podcast you guys do 2 Shots in the Ball, which we'll get to in a minute. You've been out golfing a little bit.
For sure.
What have you been doing now just to keep busy now that things are starting to open up and get back to normal a bit?
So I feel pretty fortunate that I've had a pretty good routine going for myself since all of this has started. So I have 2 pretty big dogs, so they keep me busy. So we're walking everywhere. So we're doing like a lot of kilometers a day. I'm working out a couple times a day, trying to get emails and talking with recruits, trying to get a little bit ahead of the game with that as much as I can. Also just like doing some things with the current student athletes on the team, just as far as trying to be creative with
Mm-hmm.
how we're keeping them engaged right now. Giving them some personal assignments to do that they're going to present back to me and to the team.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously the podcast, and then I presented in the Cross Canada Coaches Clinic,
Yep.
and I'm doing some writing for our alumni magazine here at CBU, and
Okay.
just little things like that, just to make sure that I'm staying on point, and obviously doing things like this, just trying to stay busy. So,
Well, I mean, you got a lot going on already. I don't think you have to worry about being busy. I think this is the time that dogs are just loving right now, because every dog's walking like 5 times a day. Like, I can only imagine.
It's amazing. They're both pretty big, and one of them's
Okay.
only 3, and his name's OG, and he's
OG.
original gangster, and
Nice.
he's like constant energy, so he's pretty tough, but they're getting spoiled right now. The other thing that we've been doing actually with our staff and with the women's staff at CBU is we've been doing a lot of PD as well. We've been doing a lot of Zoom calls like this, so we've been fortunate to get some NBA coaches and some NCAA coaches as well, and just trying to pick their brains. So we got Phil Handy from the Lakers, and Greg Gard from University of Wisconsin, Mike Dunlap, Scott Morrison. We've had some really, really good ones so far. And just again, I think this is kind of becoming the new normal now. So, which is really good for us coaches, because it's the circle's becoming a little bit tighter.
There's been a lot of those PD sessions online now. You see, because everything's online nowadays, so there's a lot of opportunity for people to learn from others in the industry, other industries in total, and really make the most of whatever time we have at home. Because, like you said, who knows what the new normal is going to be, and this is probably going to look something similar.
Yeah, I was like geeking out hard the other day watching like a 2-hour coaches clinic from the Philippines. And it was a coach from the Australian NBL, and who coaches for the University of Charlotte now. And he did an amazing 2-hour clinic, and I was just like in heaven. It was great.
Like, I don't coach, clearly, but I found myself I sat through a lot of the Cross Canada Coaches Clinics too, just to pull different things, because there's so much you can take from that into your whatever your profession is as a leader, and just piles of notes that probably wouldn't have had if this wasn't online. So
exactly. And I think that's always a thing where I'm always just trying to look to improve as much as I can. And so if I can pick the brain with anybody, like even, when we're just talking with our coaching staff, I'm always trying to write things down. I think that's the biggest thing. I remember walking in, presenting at a coach's clinic locally here in Sydney one time. And I started my presentation, and I asked how many people had a pad and a pen, and like half of them didn't. And I was just like, well, here's your problem. This is the problem right away. I was like, what are you guys doing? And I was presenting with my assistant coaches and Fabian, and who are coaches I speak with every day. And I brought my pen and paper, you know what I mean? So you can always learn.
You put yourself behind the 8 ball before you even get started. You show up to a PD session without anything to ensure you develop when you leave.
Yeah, right.
You're going to try and remember it all, and it's not – it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. At all. It doesn't at all. So, but anyway, I appreciate you asking, but how about yourself? Like, how's everything going there with your family and everything? Everybody's healthy and safe?
Yeah, now we had a bit of like a migraine scare with my wife for a bit. So, but results came back normal. So it's frustrating because you don't know what causes them anymore.
Right.
But outside of that, I mean, it's just the two of us. So I'm pretty sure I'm on the last nerve. I think I've been there probably for a while. She works out of town, so I guess that helps a bit. So she gets her break from me. But no, everything's good. Just trying to keep busy. We're kind of the problem area in Ontario. Yeah. So we're just getting into phase 2, where we are on Friday. So the 19th, we open up again a little bit more.
Okay.
So we're a bit behind everybody else, but it's been an adjustment. But I kind of used to it now. It's kind of the normal, but it's crazy to look back and think where we've been 3 months ago when Rudy Gobert got diagnosed with COVID to now.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even begin to think of what it was before, because it's gone so quick, but it feels like it's been so long at the same time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I have friends, and basically like second family back home in Ontario, but my immediate family is all in BC now. So I'm talking to them a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, Ontario, I'm lucky. You know, I feel very fortunate right now to be where I am, where we haven't had new cases, and, you know, we're able to get out a little bit more and things like that. It's been good.
Nice to get out of the house, see people still at a distance, but just talk to people and some normalcy.
Exactly.
And it's the things you took for granted before that now you crave to have back. And
and as much as that's been such a big issue, you know, I think even bigger issue and even more conversations have been happening with all the racial intensity that's happening in the US and in Canada right now. And it's, you know, things that are, you know, I'm very passionate about and my team is very passionate about. And so those conversations have been, you know, very enlightening and great for me and the staff right now too. And, you know, just trying to continue that and, again, keep that momentum going, because I think, you know, we could be at a turning point with a lot of things in society. And this new normal is not just going to be about COVID. It's going to be about how we embrace, you know, cultures and race, you know, within society too. So that could be potentially exciting, but you know, the leadership has to step up, you know, especially south of the border.
I think a lot of people have said 2020 is the year that we needed to have to get everything to where it needs to be, equality wise. Is like, I found myself, like, I'm a white male. I don't know nearly what it's like.
Right. Oh, for
never
sure.
have, never will.
Yeah.
For like having those tough conversations, the ones you need to have, and they need to continue.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can't just now, it's okay, it's like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and okay, let's just move on. You can't move on. It's got to continue, and it's got to build off of what's happened so far. You can't just post a couple of things online and say you did. No. It's got to continue.
Yeah, and I feel like I said, I think I've said this before, but I just feel very fortunate to coach, you know, such amazing young men, you know, and amazing student athletes here at CBU, and we work hard to get those types of players and those type of people, but now I think you can kind of really see how they're stepping up and embracing what they need to do, you know, right now, and they're very outspoken, and I support that 100%. I want them to, you know, speak their minds and make sure that they're telling the truth about what they feel.
100%. I think that's the only way that we can grow as a community too. Like, we have to have the conversations, we have to hear the truth so we can understand what is happening, what is going on, so we can better society so it doesn't happen again. And I was always raised on the golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated. And
for sure,
it seemed like such a simple concept at the time, but so many people don't grasp it.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm in a profession where, you know, I think as an outsider looking in, you would just see, okay, here's a bunch of, you know, for the most part, white men, you know, trying to have control in some way over a bunch of black men, you know, and it's, you know, they just need, like, guys like me have to be the people that are talking and are stepping up and being it, because, you know, did I get my job because I was white? Maybe, you know, it's probably a big part of it. But that doesn't mean that I have to, you know, continue that problem or not, you know, be, you know, a voice for these players who want to step into my shoes at some point, who want to aspire to do more than what I'm doing. And those are the things that I think that I'm trying to encourage the most, is that, you know, we need to be hiring, you know, young black men to have prominent roles within society and take these jobs and have leadership roles going forward, because we all know that they've been, you know, that they've been casted in the wrong light over history, and that it hasn't happened that way. So we just got to keep pushing and getting, you know, like I said, we're lucky to have great kids, and these kids have to go and just keep doing amazing things like they're doing right now.
It's the conversation. It can't stop. It's just got to keep going, keep building, and put the words that people have put online into action. That's
exactly
the only way it's going to grow and improve to be equal as it should have been all along.
Yeah, exactly.
But like you said, the leadership has to buy in, and down south.
No, we could talk for 2 hours about that if that was me,
easy.
But it's crazy what's happening down there. So one of my best friends is a football coach just outside of Washington D.C. So we have very interesting conversations about all of this stuff.
I've never been a big political guy, but come on.
Yeah. Hey.
I don't even know what to say anymore.
No, there's really not much to say. And I think I'm repeating myself in what I said on my podcast last week. It's just that North America is just a conservative white continent, and that's always how it's been. And the only thing that separated white people from colored people was money for the longest time. And now that gap is not the same, and there's a large section of poor white people, that live in both Canada and the United States, those people are angry because they feel like they're being put down or being viewed a different way as well, right? So they just don't have the perspective to see that this is 400 years, 500 years, that all of this has happened, and that's the tough part, right?
Yeah. I don't really know how to transition from that back to basketball. We're going to do
let's do it.
Anyways.
We can do it.
You mentioned your podcast, Two Shots on the Ball, with Neil Gordon, Adam Detienne. How did that come about? Kind of what started that whole thing to spotlight East Coast basketball?
I think it might have been even 4 years ago now, when I was coaching at the University of Calgary. Adam had approached me while we were at Nationals of sitting down and doing a couple of interviews with him, and just kind of, am I allowed to swear on this?
Go for it.
Yeah, I would just like to just start to shoot the shit about basketball and kind of my path and where I was going. And they were going to kind of turn it into MP4 files or some type of file to get it out there to record, or either that, or it was for like a class at King's, because in Halifax, because they have a journalism school there.
Okay.
And so we just started sitting down and we were talking. It was just so easy between Adam and I, like we were just kind of flowing. And I know Adam pretty well, not just as a ref, but through my time at St. FX, and his wife was an alumni there. So we just kind of started talking, and I was just like, we should do this. Like, we have to get a podcast. My brother and I did a syndicated podcast like years ago. When we were both living in Calgary. So I had a little bit of experience doing that. So I just said to Adam, let's get this going. So it was really like probably a couple of years, of just kind of like back and forth, like, hey, let's do this, but never the right time.
Yeah.
And then, once the pandemic hit, I was just like, let's go. Like, we got to figure out how to do this.
Yep.
And then he got Neil involved, who's a producer for Bell TV1 out here. And it worked out amazing. And we came up with a great idea. Because he's a ref and I'm a coach, that's why we call the Two Shots in the Ball. And then,
makes sense.
Neil's doing a great job of, kind of hosting and producing what we're doing. And, we think it's been great. We love it. And the latest series that we've been doing of having, former AUS players who are now playing professionally or had played professionally. It's been outstanding. We just had great guests.
Seems like it's been well received from the start. I think there's not a lot on Canadian basketball out there to begin with.
Right.
And like I've talked about it with Ozzy before and a few others, how the AUS is constantly overlooked, I think. So I think you guys putting the spotlight squarely on the East Coast is huge. And I think it's going to bring a lot more eyeballs to what the game is out there. And like, you've had Alan April on doing different interviews as well with current players. You mentioned your pro series now. I think Owen Classam is on the last one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
A lot of guests, a lot of interest in it. I think it's could turn into something really big.
I feel like with what you're doing here as well with your podcast, this is a topic that my brother and I used to talk about when we were getting into it. I think the more specific you can get with a podcast is the better.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of this generalized, oh, let's just talk about sports, or let's just talk about the NBA or whatever. But if the more specific that you can get, the more you're going to hit the more of an audience that you're
Mm-hmm.
looking for. And I think that's why we've had some success. I mean, I don't think it's going crazy viral or anything like that, but I just feel like it's keeping AUS basketball at the top of mind right now during all of this.
I think that's the big thing with kind of youth sports and CCAA as a whole, with 4 or 5 leagues already having suspended fall sports. The biggest concern to me is the interest level is kind of off and on to begin with.
Right.
Now you're delaying the start of a lot of sports until January, or they're just done altogether. That conversation now is stopped for another 4 months, which to me is a concern, because I don't want people to stop paying attention to what's going on north of the border. So having more things like you guys with 2 shots in the ball and just keeping that conversation going, I think is going to be huge to keeping that interest level high.
Yeah, I agree. I've gotten a couple like ribbings about articles that have been written or doing the podcast or whatever, and I just kind of laugh it off, because if people ask me to do something, I just say yes, because I just think that anytime that we can talk about our sport, we can talk about our league, we can talk about basketball in Canada, is something that's important to do, and I'm just going to keep doing it as much as I can, and that's why I want to keep things going with our podcast as well while this is happening.
Yeah, and like you said, like you guys were going for a couple of years trying to figure it out, and the time wasn't right, and then COVID hit, and everybody's got time on their hands.
Exactly.
I've seen a lot of podcasts come out, some okay, some not so good.
Yeah, exactly.
But you guys have put your time in to plan it out, and I think it's been fantastic. So
great.
I'll link it in here too, so if people should check it out. I think we learned a lot from what you guys have discussed. I feel kind of bad. They kind of threw you to the wolves in the second one, where they broke down your quarterfinal game. I was kind of taken aback by that. I felt kind of bad.
No, it was actually the hilarious part about it is that I don't know who we've told about this, but we recorded it one time, and then something happened and the recording didn't work. And so we all you see is Neil just like kind of like this, and I was just like, what? And he was just like, yeah, no, it didn't record. And he's just like, we can just come back, like we can do this another time. I'm just like, no, we can do it, like it's okay, let's just do it again. So we had to do it over again too. So
That's
it was
funny.
it was hilarious. It was great.
So kind of got the initial pain out of the way, then the second time was a lot easier, and it was
it was
funny.
one of those games too where I feel like normally I wouldn't have rewatched it as much right away if it was just a regular loss rather than something as controversial as it was. So I definitely had watched it a bunch of times, so it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. So
I watched it once or twice, and then I watched the ending I don't know how many times, debating with myself. I had a deep internal debate for one person that probably wasn't healthy, but I don't even know what to say about that either. I felt
it's okay. I'm okay. I love talking about it. We knew it was going to be a close game, and for it to come down to something like that, I think I'll say it. This is the last time I'll say it, but I just felt so bad for the guys, because we did exactly what we were supposed to do that last minute, and that's the part that hurt the most. There was 3 plays during the course of the game that I thought were fluke and that maybe shouldn't have counted. And for it to come down to that and have our best defender on their player and him to play perfect defense, et cetera, I mean, that's why I felt crushed for the guys. It was hard to talk to them after the game, because I was so happy for what they did.
Yeah, looking back at the year, you guys went 8-12, swept Acadia in the final, the two of the last 3 games
Mm-hmm.
to seal that season series and get you guys into the playoffs. Believe 6 of the losses were single digits, so the record could have been easily above 500. Could have been
Yeah.
14-8, 14-6, or any combination of those. Just kind of what your thoughts on how the year went overall, being your second full year back at CBU.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question for me, because I think in the grand scheme of things, I have to be pretty happy with how things are. But
Mm-hmm.
I think in a lot of ways, in my head, I felt there was probably some underachieving that happened there,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the amount of close games that we lost.
Yeah.
It was a very new group. We returned, obviously Paul, Ozzy, Jason, Ebe. But besides those 4 guys, it was a very new group that we had to kind of get connected and get, working together.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was some very positive things about that. And then there was some, challenging parts about that. But we came out flying. Like, we were playing very well at the beginning of the year. And then I think the key to it all was just our 3-point shooting. If we would have hit 5 more threes during the season, we probably would have been 13-7 or 14-6.
Yep.
It was just that close. And, we were in every game. We felt like we had a chance to win just about every game, with maybe the exception of 1 or 2, but like including preseason and exhibition. And I'm just really excited about where we're going and what we're doing. And the guys are super on board and motivated to where we're going and the direction of the program. And so that's the exciting part. But it's hard right now because that was our post-game meeting our year-end individual and exit meetings was like, let's keep this momentum going for 6 months. And now we got to keep this momentum going for maybe 10 months, maybe 12 months, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
So to keep the guys focused that way, that's going to be a challenge, but they're up to it.
Yeah, because you guys had a stretch there at the end of January, start of February. We had Dal, St. FX, and St. Mary's, 3 top caliber programs. St. Mary's had a bit of a down year, first half anyways.
Yeah.
But it was Dal by 9, double overtime to St. FX by 1, and then overtime to SMU by 3. You guys can still compete with the top teams in the league. And like you said, 3 or 4 more threes, and 2 of those games are in your favor.
For sure.
It's just the little things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of what the guys know moving forward too, because they know how close we were. And, we felt we could have won all 3 of those games. Like, that was the kind of the deciding stretch, when we went into it of saying like, okay, this is going to be either the bye that we're going to get, for the first round of the playoffs, or it's going to have us fighting for the playoff spot. And like you said, it was just all of them were so close, little things here or there, some on the players, some on me as a coach. I take, responsibility for some of those losses for sure. I mean, that's something that I really like to do as a coach because, I'm trying hard and those guys are working their asses off. So I want to take the responsibility off their hands and just let them go out there and play. And, like I said, we have good leadership and they're going to come back ready to go.
I hope that you guys can, like every school, can play some sort of exhibition games in the fall, because that extra 4 months it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
But I'm also on the side of it gets people healthy at the same time. So if you guys do come back in January, that level of competition across the country is probably going to be some of the best it's ever seen.
Yeah, I think so. I think the challenging part for a lot of us is just going to be what the campuses decide to do. We're online first semester here. I don't know if the access that we're going to be able to have and the amount of players that we're going to have. And I just think there's going to be some tough questions that are going to ask, like, am I going to if we do end up having a season and it's condensed or in some way, or we're playing less games or there's no exhibition,
Mm-hmm.
the tough questions are, are you going to ask a guy in his fifth year to lose his eligibility for that condensed season? Are you going to ask international players to spend the money to come here for a 6 or 8 week season? I think those are very tough questions, and the answers that I don't really have right now as far as how things are going to look moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with a lot of teams having players from out of province. And if it is online for the fall and that goes into the winter, are they going to want to pay to live somewhere else for online courses to just play basketball? What are rosters going to look like? Who's going to come in? What access are you going to have? And I think a lot of that is school, like you said, school by school. So one school could say none, and then other schools could say, "Oh well, varsity only." Then they have a leg up already because they're in the gym.
And I'm okay, and I'm okay with all of that. Like that's the part for me. Like schools can decide what they want to do. I'm obviously if they're practicing full or something like that prior to when we're allowed to be on, or whether the province decides or the health authorities decide we can be on. Obviously, there's an advantage there. But if we're all good coming back and following the same rules, like I'll be ready to go. If they say we can do workouts next week, I'll be ready to go. Whatever it is, we'll be ready and we'll make do. I think that's the one really cool thing about all this, and we keep talking to the players about, is just being nimble and flexible right now, because there's just so much unknown.
Yeah, nobody's ever been through a global pandemic before. Exactly. So it's kind of, like you said, flexibility, just take it as it comes. And if they say you can go practice next week, hell, you go practice next week.
100%.
It is what it is. Like we just got
100%.
Like some people we're just opening up now. So phase 2 is Friday. So people are getting called back to work. I mean, you just got to be flexible. You got to be ready at a moment's notice. And if they say you go back, you go back.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
You find a way to do it and make the best of what you can.
Yeah, exactly. And we like to stress individual development now too, and that you got to put that in the hands of these guys. I think the reality of it all, as much as you want to say, hey, everybody's going to come back, these student athletes are going to come back, better than they were before. I just, that's not realistic in what's happening right now. So their mental state and them staying mentally focused into the fall and all of this, that's the more of the things that I'm focused on right now as a coach, to kind of keep them focused that way.
The mental game is going to be the tougher part, because like you said, nobody's been through this before. It's an adjustment for everybody, and everybody's handles it differently, and I don't even know.
There's nothing else to say. Let's see what happens.
Just hope for the best and take it as it comes. And as you go back, you kind of work yourself back into it slowly and get up to your speed at your own speed.
Exactly.
And don't force it. So that's how you get hurt or drained. And that's never good. Never a good thing to do.
Exactly.
Looking to next year for you guys, before we get into recruiting a bit and kind of build off the article you just had with the Welland Tribune. You guys have announced 4 guys already, kind of all over Canada. You got Ontario, Alberta, to Nova Scotia in your class so far. What excites you about the 4 guys you've announced so far, being Tyson Cato, Chris Ruda, Morgan McIsaac, and Mitchell Mercero?
Yeah, so Morgan was last year. So the 3 are the ones that we announced for this year. Those 3 guys, I think we're very excited about them. Chris is I'll talk about him first.
Sure.
There's just not a lot of 6'10", 6'11" guys in youth sports, right? So that's the first thing. And he's not like a back to the basket player where we're going to say, hey, let's throw it into him 15 times a game as a first year player and go to work. That's not really how his game is. Like we're hoping like high end. I see him like more of like a Sash Kapos, but who can handle the ball a little bit better than him.
Okay.
So we're gonna try to fit him into our style that way, and hopefully he can alter some shots and be effective around the rim as a
Hmm.
first year.
Hmm.
Tyson is 18 years old, 6'5", 205 pounds. Like there's just not a lot of kids, that age
That's
that
true.
are as physical as he is. And he just comes from an amazing family, and he's so focused and dedicated and hardworking.
Hmm.
And I think he's got a great upside to what he's going to do. Again, as he continues to develop his jump shot, I mean, he's going to come in and be able to do some things as a first year player because he's so physical that
Hmm.
he's just going to be able to do some things right away.
Okay.
Um, like just playing defense and rebounding at the level that we need him to do.
Hmm.
And then his offensive game is going to round into form after that. And then, Mitchell Mercereau is a local kid who played for Riverview in Sydney.
Hmm.
And, to get a 6'4", 6'5" kid like that locally, who was the starting 3-4 on the Nova Scotia provincial team last
Okay.
summer,
Yeah.
he's again, he's one of those kids that if as he continues to develop, we think he can be pretty special. Like one of those guys who he's not going to make any mistakes, and can get up and down athletically, and
Hmm.
he's a 90s student. Like all
Okay.
checks all the boxes for what
Yeah.
we're trying to do. He's a great kid.
Yeah. You add those guys to a returning group, like you mentioned, Ozzy, Jason Callahan, Cooper Ward as well,
Hmm.
coming off a strong first year. It's an intriguing group, I think, and like you said, the guys are ready to keep the momentum going, build off of what you guys achieved last year. Obviously, didn't end the way you wanted to, but kind of grow, just continue to grow.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. We're just trying to be long. I think
mhm,
that's the biggest thing. We just want to be long and athletic, and have guys that can play a lot of different positions. And we're gonna announce a few more guys here coming up who have verbal to us, who
mhm,
are um, just trying to get some things done school wise
mhm,
to get accepted and things like that. But we're really excited about just kind of the versatility, and I think the style that we're going to be playing
mhm.
moving forward, the guys are excited about.
So, you mentioned recruiting, and in the Welland Tribune article, which I'll put in this as well, people can check that
Hmm.
out. Talked a bit about recruiting, kind of how that's now changed since COVID all hit. It's all online now. Obviously, U Sports extended their in-person visit freeze essentially until June 30th.
Yeah,
So
and
there's
it's
none of
going to
that
be
anymore.
that'll be pushed again, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's going to get extended and extended, and it's
Hmm.
just you never know and how long. But
Right.
how have you been able to, and you and your staff been able to adjust to Zoom meetings, phone calls, messaging? What's that been like for you guys? Any challenges you guys have seen with that, or how's that gone for you, that transition?
Well, I think it works a little bit both ways. I think it's obviously a challenge
Mm-hmm.
on the side of we really like getting kids on campus here. Like
Yeah.
we really like them, especially during the season. We like them to come and see what it's like, to see the fan support that we have,
Mm-hmm.
to see that your professor from your chemistry class is going to be sitting in the front row,
Okay.
watching your
Yeah.
games, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
just the uniqueness that we offer as an experience here.
Yeah.
And the people on the other side of the bleachers bringing cookies for guys on the team, like stuff like that
Okay.
that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily happen in a bigger city. So we
Right.
like kids to see that. So there's that side that we're definitely missing,
Mm-hmm.
and that one-on-one, that individual attention that we feel that we can get student athletes here.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of things, I think there's everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah.
So everybody's dealing with the same thing. And you can try to get them to commit without visits right now, and kids are actually doing that.
Yeah.
And
That's true.
it I don't think it's ideal from
Yeah.
my
That's true
perspective,
too.
because I like to see the kid. I want the kid there sitting in front of me. I want to talk to them. I want
Mm-hmm.
to look at him in the eye and see if this is what he wants. Because I know this sounds strange, and I'm not trying to sound like egotistical, but I
Yeah.
don't want kids that don't want to be here. Like if I'm sitting here and I have to like constantly try to convince somebody that this is where they should be,
Yeah,
it's probably not the right fit. Like
that's true.
people are going to fall in love with this place if this is what they want. If you want to get into a gym 24 hours a day that's across the street from where you're going to live, CBU is the place for you. If you want small classes, CBU is the place. But if you're deciding between us and U of T, like that's not what we are. We know what we are. We know what we have to offer.
Yep.
And we're hoping that kids fall in love with that. But I think it's more now I feel recruiting is going great for us overall. I love our class. I love the other additions that we're going to be making. I feel it's just like getting that head start, of trying to push ahead. And I think that's going to be unique in a lot of ways, because if we don't have a season, essentially you're going to have two classes coming in at the same time.
That's
and
true.
that's a huge challenge. So you have to keep an eye on that, and then try to adjust based on that. So I really know who I want for 2021. Like I'm very focused on specific people in that class. But if like I said, if the guys decide that they don't want to use their fifth year and they don't move on, as the example, or we don't have a season, that kind of puts a wrench into things.
Yeah, you're going to have, like you said, two classes in one. There's going to be a lot of bodies for not a lot of spots.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's interesting to see, because like you mentioned, like you want to show people the campus, you want to show them, like bring them to a game, like show that community, show what makes CBU, whether it's the community bringing cookies to guys on the team, your teachers, your professors sitting courtside watching your games. Like, it's one thing to have a virtual tour, but it's another thing entirely to be there in person. And like you said, having the person in front of you face to face, you can get a much better vibe from somebody than through a screen.
Yeah, and I think the unique thing about CBU in a lot of ways too is, so John Ryan, my boss, the athletic director, he has his number retired here. He was a former junior national team player and a basketball player. And I honestly think if he could sit down and had like the ideal people he could have select for the four teams as coaches, I think he has them. Like, I think myself and Dino, the two men's coaches for soccer and basketball, we're both alumni. Fabe and Ness for soccer, they're local. And so that's the part for me. Again, that's why I really like bringing kids here, because I was that kid from Welland, Ontario, who came on a visit and fell in love with the place. And I want to be able to show that experience and that uniqueness of why, you should fall in love, and why, this could be the place for you. And, like I said, I love, speaking with that pride and letting them see the people who are behind the scenes who have that same pride for the school.
It feels like one big family. Like, you've got alumni as coaches, locals as coaches, alumni with a retired jersey number as your athletic director. Like, it's one big community, one big family. It's tough to get that vibe through video calls. If you can get someone there, like you said, to show them campus, tell them the stories, like bring them to a game, that's a feeling you can't replicate.
No, exactly. And I feel like we've done a fairly good job during my tenure of keeping the alumni connected as well, because we're a young university overall. We're not McGill. We're not these schools that are 200 years old, right? We're 40 years old, and as a university, essentially 50 years old as a college and a university. And so we're young, and so we're not reaching the same alumni base that a lot of older schools have. So we have to say, hey, Mishak Lufile, you're a professional athlete, talk to these players. We have to keep those guys connected so that they can see, okay, it's possible to go to CBU and move on and have that career. And that's what we want these guys to see. And Ozzy and Paul now are the two top of mind who are going to have that same opportunity here in the next year or two.
And you can already see it now with Ozzy's work with the community, whether it's with the Black Lives Matter movement or just the Capers in the Community program. He's already doing that. He's already putting the work back into what's helped him at CBU. And that's, as a coach, I'm assuming there's nothing more you can ask than having guys want to do that. Not feel like they have to, but for him to go out of his way to want to help the Capers in the Community program, I think that's all you can ask.
Well, I mean, he's got a chance to be the all-time leading scorer at CBU by the time he's done. And, he's an academic All-Canadian. He has over an 80% average. He's his Capers in the Community. Like, what else can I ask for as a young man, representing our university? I'm very fortunate to be able to coach Ozzy as a great example.
Yeah. He like, as you said, with the recruiting class, like he checks all the boxes. That's all you can ask. Like, he's puts the student athlete, wants to help in the community. He's a fantastic basketball player on top of it all.
Yeah.
You can't ask for him. I'm sure you could, and then he'd probably say yes, because that seems like the guy he is.
You're right.
But what else can you ask of him? I don't know if there is anything else you can really ask.
I've said this before. Like, we have to work a little bit harder. We're not a main city. We're not a Toronto, Ottawa, Calgary, Halifax. Like, that's not what we are, right? So it's different to recruit here. You have to find a diamond in the rough. You have to dig a little bit deeper. But when you do that, you can't skip the step of, in my opinion, you can't skip the step to say, okay, let's skip straight to the talent and not worry about the character first. And like I said, it's not always a perfect process. Like, it hasn't been 100%. Obviously, there's been kids that move on, that it doesn't work out. Our personalities don't mesh, with me as a player. And I'm very forward with that, with the player if it doesn't work. But we have to really work hard for that second piece there, that character piece. Try really hard to get that with the talent on top of it, and that's what we're really trying to do.
Yeah, I don't think recruiting is ever 100%. If it is, you're probably Jesus, and it's never going to happen.
Or you're Coach K, and it's just 1 year at Duke, right? That's how it is. So
you don't get a full, like, a large enough sample to see the full character. They're there for a year and they're gone.
Right.
But you can't teach character. You either have it or you don't. You can teach the talent. You can teach. Obviously, you can't teach the talent, but you can teach the skills to improve the talent. But you can't teach the skills for character.
Yeah, and like I said, sometimes it's as simple as, okay, this is a great person, but we're just not meshing. Like, what your expectations are of the program and of me are very different than what I'm expecting of you, and it might just not work out that way, and that's okay. It happens, and you have to have those frank conversations. That's what my job is as a coach. Technically, if I have 15 guys on the team and all 15 are happy, I'm probably not doing my job very well, or we're very bad.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. Do you see this kind of online recruiting continuing a lot more than it did in the past? Once this blows over, you can have your in-person visits. Like, do you see more coaches utilizing this to try and get players from, maybe whether it be the West Coast to go to the East Coast or vice versa? Do you see recruiting staying along this trend a bit more?
Yeah, I think so. I just think it'll become a part of the process. I think that last step of bringing them to campus is still going to exist, but now that all of these virtual tours and Zoom calls and all that stuff, it does exist, and those tools are there and just more readily accessible than they have in the past. I think that those tools will be continued to use, and then the cherry on the top will be, it might work out really good for coaches in a lot of ways, because now you can be ultra specific to say, okay, I've had 5 Zoom calls with, Tyson Cato, just as the example, and I've really gotten to know him. Okay, now I know for sure that this is the kid I want to bring to campus. So
that's true.
That, I think it could be really good that way.
Puts a bit more of a record of conversations or whatever you've had, and you can go back and say, okay, yeah, I know we've got this, we've talked to them this many times, let's progress forward. And I
Exactly.
think it brings people a lot closer. It's a lot easier to chat with people or talk to recruits or than having to set up phone calls or try and meet them somehow. It kind of bridges that gap a bit and brings people a lot closer than
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
have in the past.
Yeah. And we do staff meetings within, our team. We've done like house party calls, and
Yeah.
we have like Microsoft Teams for our athletic staff that we do every week. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the new normal. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a positive thing
Yeah.
because as a coach, you have to be flexible. And during the season you're putting in crazy hours, and the off season can be traveling or doing other things or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And to be able to recenter and use these tools, I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's really important.
I just don't want to forget how to talk to people in person when this is all over. I don't want to have that awkwardness now in front of people because I'm so used to the screen and the camera right there. And
For sure.
like when the light turns on, you talk. When the light turns off, you're done. Like
Yeah.
now I got to pick up on social cues, and I don't know how that's going to go anymore.
Yeah,
It's going to
no,
be tough.
it'll come back pretty easy. I think people are like yearning for that and to get
Yeah.
out and see people again. So
Yeah.
it'll happen naturally.
Can already see it. Like I'm in Sarnia, so like the bottom of Ontario, and
Yeah,
the lineups at stores, like just to walk around. Like
yeah,
we had a new Marshalls open, which is big news in town.
yeah, yeah.
Lined up like around three corners. Like you don't need anything at Marshalls that bad.
No,
Not all.
it's just about getting out there, right? It's
And
just
that's
about people just want to get out there.
and those are the stores that you're not in and out in 10 minutes. You're looking around for an hour and a
For
half.
sure,
It's
for
just
sure.
people are going stir crazy.
Yeah,
And they're just craving any sort of human connection that
yeah.
they don't. And probably husbands just said, "Go look, just get out, leave me alone for an hour, let me do what I need to do." We had a couple of questions coming on Instagram already. We kind of touched on most of them. Another coach asked for your opinion on the pros of the flex offense.
Is this one of my coaches?
We'll not say if it was past, present, or future.
um, well, it's been a long running joke in our coaching staff about the flex offense
Okay.
because I ran the flex for Coach Mike Rayo in high school.
Okay.
And then when I was a player for Coach Billy Burns, when I first started at CBU, we ran the flex. And then Riverview High School here with Coach Shaw and my other assistants, David Bua and Dennis Stapleton, they've run flex. And there was years that I didn't call it the flex. I called it the swing, and because that's what Bo Ryan called it.
Yeah.
And so they thought it was like they thought it was like it wasn't in my vocabulary, but I know obviously it's I ran it with Coach Rayo in high school where there was no shot clock, so he would make us run it for like 4 minutes at a time sometimes. So I think that there's pros to that. There's pros to that for sure.
For sure.
And putting pressure on the rim with cuts that way.
Yeah.
But if I can't tell if this is a joke or not, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Based on willing to bet based on who asked it.
Yeah.
Probably a bit of a joke. I think.
I do love. Listen, I do love the flex. I think there's a really at all levels. It gets players to figure out how to play. Yeah. It gets them to figure out how to make cuts, how to use screens. I'm a big fan, especially at the high school level, of not having a lot of set plays, of having a continuity type offense where it's kind of everybody for themselves. If you get a good shot, that's the shot that we want as a team. And I think those are a lot of the values that it instilled in me as a player that I hope to carry on as a coach too.
Yeah, I'll let you know after who asked, so you could give them a hard time for it. So before you're coming back to CBU, you're at Calgary for 2 years, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Doing your master's.
Well, I did my master's before, but I just had a familiarity with Calgary.
Yeah. I got to ask before, because I lived in Calgary for 2 years too. When were you? What years were that? 2016,
20,
17, 17, 18?
yeah.
Okay, so we were there. I was there the second year that you were
Okay.
there. The first year.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense, but that's
No,
fine.
I
You know
got
what I
you.
mean.
Yeah, I got you.
What was that experience like for you, being an associate head coach with the Dinos?
Yeah, it was great. I feel like I got to when I was doing my master's from 2004 to 2008. I
Mm,
worked with Coach Van Horn
mm,
then, and he's amazing. Like he
mhm,
really kind of opened up things for me just to see the game very differently
mhm,
and to see that like personal side and you how to connect with players and
mhm,
to have that side of the game and how to build relationships with alumni and fundraising and all that. He's pretty amazing at that. And
mhm,
that was a fun run, like that first time being there. And I have some of my closest friends still from that time. Ross Beckering, Henry Beckering, Tyler Fiddler, Robbie Sahota, like these guys are like stars for Calgary. And then to go back was impressive. The reason why I wanted to talk about it is
mhm.
because I like to talk about Kapinga so much, because I think he was
Right.
the reason why things happened the way that they did. Because after that, the first year that I was back, um, Dan called him in and we kind of sat down and had a meeting, and there was, basically the call came and said, David, you have a chance to play for FISU this summer for Team Canada. Not sure if it's going to happen, but there's a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what happened after that was David just called me and he was just like, when are we getting in the gym? And he would just call me over and over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And all we did was work. Like we just got into the gym and we just worked.
Yeah.
And that there was such a trickle down effect from that, because they were basically everybody saw that. So it was not only me, but Dan Pearson, who's
Mm-hmm.
with them now as
Yep.
well. We were just getting in the gym, just like it was gross how much we were getting in the gym with these guys.
Yeah.
And everybody saw that and everybody
Mm-hmm.
was working. And I really felt that was like the snowball effect that kind of got things moving.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had a really like unique core group of players that really loved each other. And we just kind of got better and better and better as the season went
Mm-hmm.
along. And like I said, David and I just developed such a close relationship. That's why I'm so happy that he's, my assistant now at
Yep.
CBU. He's just an incredible young man and going to be a great coach and is a great coach. And,
Mm-hmm.
just love working with that guy. So, it was such a crazy, crazy experience,
Yeah.
to win and, to do it in Halifax, which obviously
Yeah.
I
That's
have,
true.
experience playing in the Metro Center and coaching in the Metro
Mm-hmm.
Center and, have people who were close being able to be there and watch. And then I think the crazy part, like Coach Rayo was an assistant with Brock, who we
Mm-hmm.
played in the first round that year. So
Yep.
he was there with his family. And
Okay.
so it was just like, it was an amazing run at
Just
that time.
all of your worlds collided
Yeah,
at
exactly.
one tournament, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very surreal and very exciting. And now, obviously it's something that I want to be able to do,
Mm-hmm.
again at some point as a coach. And
Yep.
that's kind of what, gets me going. That's what wakes me up every single day.
Was it a tough sell to get David to join the staff at CBU?
It
Was
was
that was
interesting
that an
how,
easy phone call, flipping it around to him? Now you calling him instead of him calling you all the time?
yeah, it was great. Like we just had such a great relationship. So when he was playing
Mhm.
in Lithuania,
Yep.
he hurt his foot. And so he called me from Lithuania and he was just like, man, I hurt my foot. I'm trying to figure out like kind of what the next step is for me and what
Mhm.
I'm going to do. And I want to get into coaching. What do you think that I should do? So we kind of talked about it, and it was kind of more like a generalized phone call at that
Okay.
time
Yeah.
about how he was talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
And then it moved forward from that. Then the next time he called, it was like, hey, like, what do you think about if I was to work with you? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's always what we wanted to do. And the great part about him, and that was kind of the same relationship that I had with like Mombi Diawara and Lucas Manis and like
Mm-hmm.
and Lars Schluter. Like these
Yep.
guys are so intense, but they know that you love them. So like
Yep.
David and I will like be in the office like going at each other.
Yeah.
Like why he'll be like, why would you do that? And like
Yep.
I'll be like, well, why do we want that? And we'll go at each other. Like it'll be like serious, but then
Yeah.
it doesn't matter afterwards because
Yeah.
we know what the goal is at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the day and
Yeah.
how serious we are about that success. And so those are the things that kind of push. I think that's what's going to kind of push the program to get to where it's going to be here in the next few years. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love building what we're building right now. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very different than when I came here before, when we had a player like Jimmy Dorsey, who was already here, who was just so freaking incredible. And,
Yep.
one of the best players in the country. So it's just very different to build where we came from. And that's what's exciting right now.
That Calgary team you guys had that won the title, they were good.
Oh,
It was
just such a fun team because
yeah.
I remember it was just a very different team than the team
Mm-hmm.
that we had the year before, where we had so much size and we like
Mm-hmm.
just like post players who weren't playing at all, who were very good players. Like
Mm-hmm.
Matt Ellis is the example, who played at UVic this year, and it was an all-star in Canada West. Like
Yep.
he played the year before, but was only getting probably like 8 minutes a game.
Mm-hmm.
And that we just had all this depth of length, and then all these guys either graduated or left, and we were basically had Connor Foreman and Lars Schluter as our two big guys,
Mm-hmm.
and that was it. And so we
Yeah.
made this decision of how we were going to play, and how we need to shoot it, and playing smaller, and it worked out. The guy who kind of did it all, who like obviously David and Mombi and like those guys are otherworldly, but the guy who was the linchpin of it all was Johnny Verone, because
Mm-hmm.
he's 6'2", but he could guard 5 positions because
Okay.
he was so strong. And so he would guard like Brody Clark, and then he would guard what's the guard from Saskatchewan's name, who scored everything. But
Shit.
yeah, but anyway, so that was just kind of gave you
Mm-hmm.
the like just that versatility that he had, and it
Mm-hmm.
was really exciting. And that's what we're hoping to mimic with CBU, and we think we have some pieces like that too.
What were the emotions going through your mind when the final buzzer went off and you guys had that national title?
It was such a close game, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
wild because we felt like we were in control for most of it, and then Manny hit that crazy 3,
Mm-hmm.
to tie it up. And, we were kind of just like, we were a little bit shook as a group.
Yeah.
We thought we were, but the guys were just so focused and then executed that play well. But it was just kind of like, with the dominance that Carleton has had, over the last 20 years,
Yeah.
to be able to get that, to be able to have, say that you've won a national championship is obviously very special,
Mm-hmm.
just because you want to be there. They have been so dominant,
Yeah.
and, to have that opportunity to do it, it's just something that'll connect to that group, for forever. And like I said, the two Dans, Van Horn and Pearson and I, like we're so tight, and
Mm-hmm.
to that whole team is still very tight and stays together. It's yeah, I mean, it's still great. It's still great to like rewatch that final shot too. It's a lot of fun.
Brings back a lot of memories, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It feels like every year it's like Carleton, and then it's like everybody else is just kind of going for second. It feels like.
Yeah,
And
you know what?
tough.
I'm hoping that it won't be like that forever.
I hope not.
I'm hoping.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's teams that are making strides and pushing, and
Yeah.
obviously Dow, showing this year how close they were, to winning. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's a lot more to be in one close game with Dow versus being in a close game with Carleton because of how they're built. And I'm not saying that we're right there or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that, but just to know that you can be in that same atmosphere is
Yep.
all we're trying to do here at CBU. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the mark of a successful program, is what your down year is. What's your down year? What does
Yeah.
that look like?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean you're not making the playoffs. That means you still have a chance to be there, and that's
Right.
what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too, like you mentioned, there's a lot of teams that are making good strides to get into that upper echelon and contend for the national title year in and year out. A lot of it, I think, has to change with the narrative around U Sports basketball because all you hear about is Carleton
For sure.
from a national level, and you look at the highlights from the finals, 45-second highlight pack on TV. It's all Carleton.
Yeah.
Never mind that Dow led at half.
Yeah. Well, even the year that we won,
Mm-hmm.
it was the same thing. It was like one of the best games. I think people all say it. It's one of the best games they've ever seen.
Yep,
And
I'll agree
for
with
there
that.
to be for there to be like a 40-second highlight pack on Sportsnet, like you said, that narrative has to change.
Mm-hmm.
People have to really tune in and focus on what they're seeing, because
Yep,
there's just great players. Like there's
yep.
national team, there's professional players that are playing in U Sports, and
Mm-hmm.
there's great players. And I just don't think kids, parents, all the people who should be engaged with it should be engaged. To me, I understand the cost of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I could rant about this for a while. Like
So could I. Mm-hmm.
I understand the cost of like providing a great television experience,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever network.
Yep.
But if you did it regionally,
Mm-hmm.
there could be a way to do it, whether it be like a Saturday where you're showing 4 games, where whether it be women's, men's, from moving across the country.
Yep.
It's possible to do. It's
Yep.
possible. And that's where we're missing out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did that, you would generate more excitement, you would get more fan attention, you would get
Mm-hmm.
all of this. And like you said, it's a little bit of a vicious circle the other way,
Yep.
where if you're not showing it, it's not happening.
Yeah. If it's out of sight, out of mind, if nobody sees it, then nobody cares.
For
Nobody
sure.
pays attention, and like you see the interest for national media drum up at nationals, but that's 8 teams out of 48. There's 48
Exactly.
teams in the country that deserve coverage, and you can model it kind of like what ESPN does with College Game Day. Like you
Exactly.
said, just take it to one school, do men's and women's, and just work your way across the country. There's maybe 12 weekends in a
Mm-hmm.
season. If you go, because you guys start November, so you even tie in your preseason tournaments and just kind of work that in. You've got 3-4 months of weekends that you're pumping out games on a Saturday
Yeah, but think
regionally.
about all the rivalry games, and if you had some cooperation across U Sport, and
Mm-hmm.
if you showed that UBC UVic, that Calgary Alberta, the
Mm-hmm.
Manitoba Winnipeg, the Regina SAS, the Ottawa Carleton, the
Mm-hmm.
McGill Concordia, the Dallas SMU, the
Mm-hmm.
CBU Saint FX, right? Like I just did it. Like it's
Yep.
really not. You could do it regionally. Like you
Yep.
don't have to ship the cameras everywhere. You
No.
can do it regionally. There's enough equipment to do it. And like that's what I always say. If you threw a camera in the gym in the Sullivan Fieldhouse here at CBU on a Saturday night
Mm-hmm.
at 8 o'clock for a Saint FX versus CBU game, and people saw the crowd that was there, they would be like, what is this? Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
going on? Like, it doesn't happen like that,
No.
across the country. But if you were doing it like that all the way across the country, and you said, okay, here's this televised game that's going to be on, it would, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, it'd be like that College Game Day, and people would show up and people would jam the gym.
And there's so many storylines in the rivalries too. Like you can tie in, like if locally you can do like an hour pregame show. If you come in on a Friday, you film your asides, you get your interviews done, piece it together Friday night. There's an hour pregame show telling all your stories.
For sure.
And if you tie in like you do Saturday predictions for games all over the country just for fun,
Yep.
make it that game day experience, and then bang, 6 o'clock women's game, 8 o'clock men's game,
Yep.
and just roll your way across the country, and then end it off with nationals on TV or live stream like it was this year. Just anything.
Yeah, it's
Anything.
doable. It's definitely doable.
I
And
think it is too.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. You get the right leadership, you can do it for sure. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it just we got to keep doing things like this, and bring that attention, and that's what we can do.
And it's going to be a shameful plug, but just keep spreading the word. That's all it is.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Set
they got
myself up
it.
for that. That was good.
No, it's good. That's perfect. So I appreciate you taking the time and
Yeah.
talking to me about this. It was a blast.
I appreciate you doing this. And anytime you want to jump on to talk CBU, how we can get it on TV, set up a plan for college game day,
Yeah,
whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen.
yeah. No, this I'm easy to get a hold of. So just get a hold of me, and if you need guests or you need people to come on, just let me know. I'll be there.
I will keep that in mind for sure.
Okay.